In today's gospel, what we have is Jesus talking about the Sermon on the Mount. He's talking about two things. One is the idea of an eye for an eye. The other is to love, you've heard it said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy, but to really see everybody as our neighbor. And in fact, in the eye for an eye, what it is that he says that I tell you to offer no resistance to one who is evil. If someone strikes you on the right cheek, offer the left as well. If one wants to go to the law over your tunic, hand over your cloak as well. Should anyone press you into service for a mile, go 2 miles. Give to the one who asks. Do not turn your back on the one who wishes to borrow. Again, that idea of an eye for an eye is to try to limit the amount of justice, the amount of retribution that a person could inflict upon another. So if someone takes their goat or kills their cow, you can't kill the person. You can only do so much. So it was a way of limiting the amount of retribution. But the problem is that it tends to be over time just eye for an eye. It just tends to be tit for tat. So where's the breakout in that? Where's the possibility of peace? It really doesn't exist. So what Jesus does is that he offers the three ideas. One is that someone gives you an insult by giving you a backhanded slap to the right cheek. Offer the left as well. If someone wishes to hand you, take you to court over your tunic, to hand over your cloak as well, and so forth. And so what it does is that it's really nonviolent means of trying to shock the person into seeing what they're doing. What it is not is Jesus saying, be a doormat, don't care, be a doormat, let everybody walk all over you and step all over you. Because certainly Jesus didn't do that. Certainly in the case of the religious leaders, he certainly said the truth and was willing to say it quite forcefully. Certainly in the case of Pilate and Herod, he was willing to say the truth and say it quite forcefully. So it's not a matter of being a doormat. What it is because if we're a doormat, two things tend to happen with us. One is that we tend to have that living martyr kind of mentality. Oh, I'm so abused. Oh, I'm so abused. Oh, people are taking advantage of me. Oh, I'm so wonderful, but these people are so horrible. And then the other is the idea of going behind people's back, talking about them, trashing them, things like that. But again, what we do is that if we are creative in our ways of thinking, but do not go for an eye, but instead be realistic in our confrontation, what we have to do is we have to give up that idea of what we want to do. I tell people that they've got to be, in a way, a kind of a holy detachment. Because a lot of times what we'll do is that we want things to be done a certain way. We want the outcome to be our outcome. We want this to be done this way. We want all these things to occur 1, 2, 3 in that order. But instead, what we really want to do is we want to give up that and then have God be in charge, God be in control. And so certainly if we use nonviolent means, it may not be maybe as fast as the violent means of changing things, but God willing, it will be long lasting, because sometimes things can change, but they're only a short-term change. So what we want to do is that we want to have that long-term effect. And so sometimes it will take time for it to occur. And so it's not going to be on my schedule or on my ordering of it done, but really seeing it on God's ordering. The other thing about loving our neighbor is, again, not being able to pick and choose our neighbor. One of the problems with the nation of Israel when it came back for the rebuilding of the temple, rebuilding of the second temple after the Babylonian exile, is that they really went very full into separatedness. They saw that the sinning was caused by them commingling with the neighboring peoples. And that's fine. But the problem is that it's very easy then to say separatedness becomes looking down upon that person, seeing them as inferior, seeing them as something less than ourselves. And so what we don't want to do is we don't want to get into that situation. So even though, it happened to Israel, it happens to us in various occasions. Think about in our nation cities, what we tended to have was that we tended to have groups that would come, and particular ethnic groups, and they would come and to be a particular part of a city. Well, that was great because what it did was that it gave them a certain family orientation, it gave them a cohesiveness. But what we didn't want, and what many times we did see, was that, again, a suspicion at best of newcomers or outright hostility toward newcomers. So what Jesus is saying is you can't just pick and choose your neighbor, but to see everybody as our neighbor and not to look down upon the person. You may, again, want to separate them from them because of their sin, but not to look down upon them, but instead to pray for them, instead to see, not to see them as somehow inferior, because as the old statement is, before the grace of God go I. So we want to see instead to be a prayer partner in those situations. Thanks. God bless.